Good morning, I'm Hank Hudson, and coming up today on RoxomTV News, we have Meta and Google head to court facing a first-of-its-kind trial over whether Instagram and YouTube were designed to be addictive and whether infinite scroll finally meets a jury. Bitcoin searches explode as prices swing violently while interest in crypto collapses, suggesting fear hasn't gone away, it's just gotten more selective. But first, a Super Bowl halftime show turns political after Bad Bunny performs mostly in Spanish and President Trump fires back, turning pop culture into a full-blown culture fight. All that and more right now on today's show. Let's get into it.
América, sea Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, Bolivia, Perú, Ecuador, Brasil, Colombia, Venezuela, Guyana, Panamá, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, México, Cuba, República Dominicana, Jamaica, Haití, las Antillas, United States, Canadá, and my motherland, mi patria, Puerto Rico. Seguimos aquí.
What began as a halftime performance quickly turned into a national argument about culture, language, and identity, as Bad Bunny's largely Spanish-language Super Bowl halftime show sparked an immediate and emotional reaction that extended far beyond music criticism. The Puerto Rican superstar, the first solo Latino artist to headline the event, was praised by fans for celebrating Latino culture and global pop music on the biggest stage in American sports. But backlash followed quickly. Conservative commentators and online critics framed the performance as divisive and un-American, arguing that it clashed with their expectations of what the Super Bowl should represent. Much of the criticism focused on language. Some viewers argued that Spanish language songs alienated English-speaking audiences, despite the fact that Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory and Spanish is spoken by tens of millions of Americans. Others cited Bad Bunny's past political positions, including criticism of U.S. immigration policy and advocacy related to Puerto Rico, arguing that his selection felt political rather than purely entertainment. Supporters pushed back just as forcefully. They argued the performance reflected modern American demographics and the NFL's effort to appeal to younger, more diverse audiences. President Donald Trump weighed in on Truth Social, calling the performance absolutely terrible, an affront to the greatness of America, and questioning why Spanish language music was featured at the Super Bowl. His comments energized critics while drawing accusations of cultural resentment from Latino leaders and progressive figures. Supporters pointed to the wedding segment as a unifying moment and highlighted Bad Bunny's closing message of love over hate, strong enough to draw an emotional reaction from an ESPN reporter. NFL executives defended the show as aligned with the league's broader audience strategy. Now, for viewers at home, this matters because it shows how quickly pop culture becomes political and how entertainment can reveal deeper fault lines about identity in America. All right, joining me to talk about this story and others this morning, one of my best friends of the program, the man with the biggest beats in the industry. We, of course, are talking about Stephen Orr. Stephen, happy Monday. Welcome to the show. How was your Super Bowl Sunday, my friend? Great to see you.
Thanks, Hank. Yeah, Super Bowl, the game itself was kind of boring. I mean, there wasn't even a score for the Pats for it's like a second half, right? But, you talk about entertainment on a pro sports level. And of course, I have worked in pro sports for a very long time, NFL, PGA Tour, NBA, and PGA. And when I look at the people who they pick as to be let's say the entertainment, it's not always music, right? It's also entertainment as in actors. It could be entertainment as in food. Think of Guy Fieri, right? So they have to pick people that are in the mix of what's happening at that moment. So when you look at who they picked Bad Bunny, who won a bunch of Grammys. They picked Bad Bunny, who was pretty popular. But I understand the other side. I understand the conservative side saying, wait a minute, this isn't the A team coming out to play music. This isn't a person who speaks complete English all the time. And yet, in the middle of it, Hank, my dear friend Lady Gaga walks out and starts singing as a surprise, right? As a friend of his. When you ask people how many countries are in North America, most people just say three. There are
Right.
23, and Bad Bunny named about 15 of them in the end of it, right? So he understood that. And many of those people that are in the NFL as players are also players. They're also Latin America. They're also North Americans as well. So
Yeah.
there's some mixture of unity message into it. But when he came out and he grabbed, he said, first thing he said was, God bless America. So he had a very specific message of saying unity and not disunity. I also
Right.
had the opportunity to watch the other one with Kid Rock and with Turning Point, and I thought that was good too, Hank. I mean, I liked them both. But when you talk about the number of people that were watching the Super Bowl, it was 65 million. When you talk about the number who were watching the Turning Point alternative halftime show, it was 5 million. But when you put that in the terms of football overseas, it was 1.5 billion. So it wasn't a worldwide audience that saw this. And for the president to massacre the language and him personally on the air, I thought was disgraceful. Although these racist posts lately have been a little much for me.
Yeah.
But I understand the president saying, hey, look, I'm talking to the red meat of my people, the conservatives. I'm trying to keep that banner up. Why? Because the elections are coming up and at a 37% approval rating, I totally understand it. This is not a trigger moment. This is a unity moment. And this is a rarity because we have the Super Bowl and the Olympics at the same time, which we also heard peaceful mentions. Charlize Theron mentioned that herself, talking about her own our own South Africa presence with Mandela. So look, I get it that the world of sports and the world of entertainment are commingling a little too close together, but yet the NFL is not a government entity. It is its own thing, and they can pick their own people. So there's nothing to say here, but they're allowed to pick whoever they want to pick.
Yeah, it was a silly thing. Like as you mentioned, Bad Bunny, I think just won like Artist of the Year. I think he's like one of the highest streaming artists on Spotify in the world. So
He is
it
now,
was
especially on Apple Music. He's now number one again. So
yeah.
yeah.
It was crazy to me that there was such a hullabaloo about this. I guess, and from the NFL's perspective too, they've been very open for years now about wanting to attract, younger and more global audiences. So this seems like a very calculated move that maybe does spark a little bit of controversy, but people were talking about it before the show, they were talking about it during it, and they were talking about it after it, as we are right
And it
now.
got more people to watch both the Turning Point and the Olympics and the game itself. But the two things that I really saw out of this was the first person that Bad Bunny hugged before the show and took a picture, selfie with him, was Tim Cook from Apple. And the second person he took after the show and after the game with Roger Goodell, the NFL
Yeah.
commissioner. So he had it all covered with all spots. I kind of liked it. I mean, it's not my music, but I don't care. And you know what? We need to have an open mind and be more unifying. It's what the NFL's been about lately, anyway.
Yeah, yeah. The NFL was really the one thing I thought bringing us all together this year, and now it's over. So I'm really concerned about the
I'm ready
welfare
for
and
baseball, Hank. I don't know about you. I'm ready for something else.
yeah, now we're in that kind of like doldrum period. It's like there's NBA and then hockey, and then this is where we get the kind of tough part of the year once football is over. But I want to get back to this story here really quick, Big Beat, because when President Trump jumps in, as he does, and he frames what should be a celebrated pop culture moment like we saw last night, but he frames it instead as an affront to America. Do you think that actually changes how people respond to this, or does it mainly just reinforce diverse opinions that were kind of already locked in anyway. Does Trump's opinion of this change, or is he just speaking to the same audience he's always talking to?
Yeah, it's the same red meat to his conservative constituents. He's beefing them up for November. He knows he's at a 37% approval rating. He knows he's losing the midterms really badly, and he's already at that point where he's having to scream and yell again. So, no,
Hmm.
I don't think it changed anybody's minds, and I don't think they really care. They think they cared more about the game than they cared about anything else, and the game was boring, so they had nothing else to talk about. And so there you go. No, I don't think he changed anybody's minds, but reinforced his own people, and that's about it.
And looking ahead, Stephen, do you think moments like this that will, okay, do you think moments like that we saw last night will make big institutions more cautious about maybe cultural expression going forward into the future? Or does this maybe actually reinforce the incentive to keep pushing forward toward a more, toward diverse audiences, even if it does guarantee some backlash? Because this kind of feels like any kind of publicity is good publicity. And like you said, the game was kind of boring. So it seems like the halftime show kind of became the main event.
This was the most watched NFL Super Bowl game in history. I mean, that's
Was
what
it?
exactly what it was meant for, right?
Yeah.
I believe we call it the Howard Stern phenomenon. Half the people watch him because they love him, and half the people watch him because they hate him, right? He
Yeah.
still gets the eyeballs, and he still got the views. He doesn't care. It's the same situation, and stirring this kind of pot is only worsening the situation in the United States, the chaotic side of which what the president wants. Does this stop us from looking at the Epstein files? Does this stop us from all the other nonsense going on? Probably because the narrative changed. But now we're back on the Olympics. So look, I get it, but to me, Hank, it's like pass this off and move on. What a waste.
Yeah, you said it first. So we're going to do just that. And you mentioned we're going to get into our next story here that you touched on briefly, but it's an ongoing one from London to Oslo to Washington as the Epstein document release is triggering new fallout across politics, diplomacy, and global finance. In the United Kingdom, newly disclosed emails suggest Prince Andrew shared confidential trade documents with Jeffrey Epstein while serving as a government envoy in 2010. The revelation has renewed scrutiny over potential breaches of confidentiality rules and intensified pressure on British authorities to re-examine Andrew's conduct. Now, the disclosures land as Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government faces growing political strain from resurfacing Epstein links tied to senior figures. In Norway, the fallout has already forced action. A senior diplomat resigned after media reports revealed past contacts with Epstein, with the foreign ministry saying the disclosures undermined confidence in his ability to represent the country. In Washington, congressional investors are running into resistance. Ghislaine Maxwell is expected to refuse substantive answers during a House deposition, invoking her Fifth Amendment rights despite earlier cooperation with federal prosecutors. That limits Congress's ability to extract new information as millions of documents continue to be released. The financial sector is also feeling the pressure. New record shows Swiss banking giant UBS continued managing accounts for Maxwell for years, even after her ties to Epstein were widely known and after his arrest in 2019. The documents indicate UBS moved millions of dollars and assigned dedicated relationship managers. UBS says there was no evidence of any wrongdoing. Meanwhile, newly released U.S. Justice Department records are complicating public narratives. An Associated Press review of FBI and prosecutor memos found extensive evidence of Epstein abusing underage girls, but little proof he operated a trafficking network for powerful clients. Investigators concluded that a rumored client list did not exist. And for those of you watching at home, this matters because the documents are reshaping long-held assumptions while raising difficult questions about accountability, institutional judgment, and how power is protected across borders. We're bringing Stephen back. Stephen, with new documents now touching politicians and diplomats and major financial institutions across multiple countries, what stands out most to you about how far-reaching this Epstein fallout has become? Because this just keeps getting wilder.
Yeah, when I looked and certain, we call them gates, whether it's Watergate or Clinton Gate, or it always comes down to one thing. Where there's smoke, there's usually fire, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes they don't always want to come out at the very beginning. So as these documents came out, and now we have got more released, President Trump's name is in these files 38,000 times. Let me repeat that, Hank. 38,000 times. Prince Andrew, who's getting the brunt of this, is only several hundred times.
Mhm.
Now the Congress, the Republicans in Congress are asking for Bill and Hillary to come in front of Congress and talk, but not do it in front of cameras, to do this behind closed doors. And Bill and Hillary, you grab the bull by the horns, you're going to get the horns, and they're going to get
Mhm.
the horns. So they've asked for an open debate, and we'll bring them out. Then you also hear
Yeah.
from the literally from the King of England today saying we are going to fully cooperate with every organization, whether that's FBI or MI6, in regards to this. In the meantime, Andrew's been kicked out of every house that's a part of House of Windsor or part of the family itself. Now, there's
Mhm.
several side buildings and things that they own, like rumored, let's say, condos and things of that nature that they moved out of. You look at Fergie, she no longer lives in any of those either, and the ones that got hurt now are the kids. So when
Mhm.
you say the next level of this, as more documents are being put out there, the redacted parts of this are to also to protect the innocent, the ones who have been
Right.
beaten, have been beaten down on this, and they have asked that their names be redacted. But we're seeing videos, Hank. We're seeing things that just should not be seen in the public, and this needs to go away. I mean, fast, and they need to put these guys down quickly and fast. The fact that we actually have this much data and news and factual documents coming out of it, and now, according to
Mhm.
this morning, Ghislaine Maxwell is now going to testify.
Yeah.
There's something here, and it needs to be taken care of quickly.
Oh, there's more than something here. There's something there 38,000 times. You might have heard this because it was going around a little bit. Big B. Did you know that Trump's name is mentioned more times in the Epstein files than Harry Potter's name is across all 7 Harry Potter books? Like, that's
He
how
who
much
shall
he's
not be
mentioned.
named, I guess, now, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
what is
So,
going on? I mean, and it's interesting because he says, "Why don't we get past this?" Who at first it was who, and oh well, yeah, I kicked him out. Just tell the truth. There's something going on here, and we
yeah.
need the White House needs to come clean. The administration needs to say exactly what's going on here because this isn't like some kind of small deal here. This is pedophilia. This is another level of things, an island dedicated to this. So no, this is something really bad, and the financial implications behind this are even worse.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yes, to me, this has got to be put down very quickly, and we need to find out who's and what and where and when and why.
Yeah, well, I got to say, they're doing a pretty good job of selectively putting down parts of this. I mean, to hear that our sitting president's name is in these files 38,000 times, Obama got more guff in the media for this for wearing a tan suit, let alone being mentioned in the Epstein files 38,000 times. Like, this is wild. And it's crazy. There's no other president in history of the United States or any kind of civilization of mankind that can get away with this the way that Trump
I mean, it
has. It's
reminds
amazing.
me of President Nixon. I'm not a crook, right?
Yeah.
Or Clinton saying, I did not have sexual relations with that woman. I mean, what
Yeah.
did you do? Who did you do it with? Why and where? Tell us what's going on. If you don't want to tell us, then there's an FBI investigation. If you don't want to tell us, then there's some authorities that are already involved in this, right?
Yeah.
So things need to happen very quickly.
Yeah, Teflon Don is really doing his work on this one. And you mentioned the FBI, and I want to kind of hone in on that a little bit, Big Beat, because the records are suggesting that there's overwhelming evidence of abuse in this case, as you and I know. But strangely, there's very little proof, apparently, of a powerful clientele network, which kind of contradicts what many people have believed for years now. How should viewers at home make sense of that gap? Is that just there's just not concrete info yet, or is it fair for us to assume that this was part of a larger network? Because it's kind of a weird thing. We've heard this narrative for so long, but there's not exactly proof that it was in fact like this large, overreaching network. What do you make of this, Big Beat?
How much more proof do you need? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
true.
why was the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, saying that there are no files, and then I have the files on my desk, and yet the president spent a whole election cycle saying I want to release the files. Now, yeah, the files, release them, and now they're going to
Mhm.
be redacted. There's too much I don't really understand, and I don't even want to begin to understand. I think the authorities should be the one handling this. Speculation is for us later. I do think that the news has handled this quite diligently. But I also think that the authorities need to be handling this in a much more diligent way, and I think that they are. And I'm really pretty proud of our the way the FBI is being handling this and the fact, but I don't think they've been releasing the documents nearly as fast as they should. Because even Republicans are now threatening to like even one congressman and one senator said that they're willing to read every accuser's name in the House and in the Senate. So there's more to this. The back end, we don't know everything, but obviously there's something there. And as I said at the beginning of the show, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah, there's a lot of smoke right now, so I'll be very curious to see when the smoke settles what that fire actually looks like. But I'm sure we'll be talking about that the next week or two. All right, we're going to move on to our next story here, Stephen. And this one's going on in Brussels, where regulators are stepping directly into the future of artificial intelligence distribution, and they are starting with WhatsApp. European competition authorities have ordered Meta to stop blocking rival AI chatbots from operating on WhatsApp, arguing that the company is unfairly locking competitors out of one of the world's most widely used messaging platforms. Now, the ruling comes as an interim measure The ruling comes as an interim measure in an antitrust investigation launched in December and represents rare early intervention by the European Commission. Now, at the center of the dispute is Meta's decision to make its own AI assistant the only option available through WhatsApp's business interface. That policy change took effect last month in January. Now, regulators say it could cause serious and irreparable harm by raising barriers for smaller AI developers and entrenching Meta's dominance before the market fully takes shape. European officials argue that WhatsApp's enormous reach, used daily by hundreds of millions across the European Union, make it a critical gateway for emerging AI services. Now, if Meta controls access, they say, rivals never get a fair chance. Competition Commissioner Teresa Ribeiro warned that the bloc must act quickly to prevent dominant tech firms from distorting fast-growing AI markets while investigations are still underway. Under the interim order, Meta would be required to maintain third-party chatbot access under the old rules until a final decision is eventually reached. Meta, however, is pushing back. The company says there is no justification for intervention and argues developers can distribute AI tools through app stores, operating systems, or other platforms. European regulators, however, disagree. They point to past cases involving Apple, Google, and Meta itself, where ecosystem control was used to sideline competitors. This marks a shift in Europeans' tech crackdown. You see, after years focused on privacy and content moderation, regulators are now targeting AI infrastructure and distribution. And for those of you at home, this should matter because decisions made in Europe often shape how technology works globally. And this ruling could influence how AI assistants are embedded into everyday apps far beyond the European Union. We're bringing Stephen back. Stephen, at a basic level, what is the European Union trying to stop here before it becomes permanent? And why are regulators acting now instead of waiting years like they often do? What are your thoughts on this story?
WhatsApp is very interesting. Living in the United States, we have lots of different ways of communication, but communication between here and Europe and around the world, it's so much easier with WhatsApp. And I'm a regular user of WhatsApp because it is protected. It's end-to-end encryption, and it's very popular because a lot of people already have Facebook, they've already got Instagram, and the very, very rare thing that we do is get outside of an ecosystem. So we get back into it, and it's WhatsApp. The thing about WhatsApp is that they've had this since the beginning of WhatsApp, and it's I have to look it up myself, but it's the WhatsApp Business API, and the terms effectively say they exclude third-party APIs. It was said that from the very beginning, and Europe approved at the beginning. So I'm not really sure what they're thinking here now, except the AI side of it. The thing about WhatsApp that we all love, Hank, is the fact that it is end-to-end encryption. And if we start putting in other third-party AIs that we don't know, they may not be end-to-end encryption. So all of a sudden, you breaking down that security within WhatsApp. So I'm not a big fan of that, but I do understand EU does address those different things around, and they're more stringent than the United States are with their rules. So they took advantage of that and went fast. Because there really isn't a social media app platform that over in Europe that's really as popular as Facebook.
And you mentioned an interesting thing about how Europe is a little bit different than the United States, is it seems that compared to the US, Europe seems far more willing to intervene early with tech giants, as we're seeing here. So my question for you, Stephen, is how different is this approach? And what does that say about how each side, both the United States and the European Union, views competition, and that we seem to be a little more laissez-faire, let people kind of innovate and figure it out. At least that's our current temperature. It wasn't back, less than about a year ago. But it seems like Europe's a lot more strict. So how do you feel like the European Union views competition as opposed to here in the United States, given that they're more willing to kind of interfere and regulate right off the jump, as opposed to here in the good old United States?
I don't think the EU is trying to interfere. I think the EU is actually intervening on behalf of the people of Europe, the Commission itself. When you look at the different countries, you're already seeing countries even outside of Europe that are starting to ban social media with kids. Now I want to say people under 13, I think now is in Australia, 18 in some countries, 18 I think is Australia, 13 now. Spain is trying to pick that up now as well. So there is a lot of concern about how social media is being implemented into our lives. When you look at it from the perspective of WhatsApp seems to be the business version of social media, of quick and end-to-end encapsulation when you come to end-to-end. So, all right, so let's think about that in the future. What are the two things that would really affect the EU versus the United States? And that would be where the decisions are being done, which is The Hague, which is where criminal courts have to make those decisions, and they want to have much more stringent laws. And so the EU takes that on the technology, but way before the United States does, because the United States has states, not one country, as in many countries in Europe, right? So they have to have a more formal thing, and when they do, the EU Commission is usually on top of that much faster than states commissions are here in the United States. So I don't see a big deal here. A cool thing about Facebook is it won't be what EU wants, and it won't be exactly what Mark Zuckerberg wants. It'll be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, it's usually the best. What do they say? The best deals are when both sides leave a little unhappy. So I guess we can hope for that going forward. And staying on this story for one more big beat, even for viewers who might be outside of Europe right now, do you see decisions like this maybe shaping how AI products get built and rolled out globally? Is Europe kind of helping lead the charge by being one of the first to act in these types of regulations and guidance?
I certainly hope not. WhatsApp is a different situation because we've had social media, right? We've had it for a very long time. AI, the way that we see it today, I mean, AI has been around for many years, 50 years. The last 15 has been been a lot stronger. And the last 3 has been really good. And the last 6 months has really upped the game in AI. No, I hope not. We don't know where AI is going. Yes, we need guardrails. And yes, I'm even doing that with Quasar Markets. But you look at AI, it's a technology that hasn't really been formed. If we had done the same thing to the internet at the very beginning of the internet being formed, we might not have the internet we have today, right? It may be really tamped down. We don't want a Russian internet. We don't want a Soviet version of the internet. We want an AI version that's a little more open and more agnostic as to the data, get us the stronger and better data. So no, I think that Europe is concerned about being behind and not being on the right rails for protection of their people, as we talked about earlier. But no, I think the EU needs to back off just a wee bit because the technology hasn't really totally formed yet. Now, there'll be some people that argue with that and say we need to be on top of it early. I wouldn't disagree with that, but it's how much pressure you put onto those rails at the very early that we don't stifle technology in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to stunt innovation before you can even figure out what kind of things you could do with this new tech. So no, that makes a lot of sense. All right, we're going to move on to our next story, going from this to healthcare, as millions of American families are now discovering that the health insurance they relied on last year is no longer affordable this year, as Enhanced Affordable Care Act subsidies that once capped premium costs have expired, and the financial shock is already rippling through household budgets. According to analysis from the Kaiser Family Foundation, average out-of-pocket premiums for subsidized enrollees are projected to more than double, rising from about $888 in 2025 to roughly $1,940 $4 in 2026. That represents a 114% jump in net cost for many families. Even beyond the subsidy, Cliff ensures underlying rate filings are moving higher. Data from the Health System Tracker shows benchmark ACA premiums, which are used to calculate subsidies, rising an average of about 21.7% for 2026. Policy experts at Harvard University's T.H. Chan School of Public Health note that these increases reflect broader trends, including rising medical prices and increased healthcare utilization that have been building for years. The coverage fallout is already visible. Early enrollment data from KFF shows ACA marketplace participation declining in 2026 as higher premiums push people out of the system. Healthier and younger adults are the most likely to drop coverage, a shift that researchers warn can destabilize insurance risk pools and drive prices even higher for those who remain. Frustration is spilling onto social media as well. Some Americans have turned to TikTok for advice on cutting healthcare costs or going without insurance altogether, including negotiating medical bills or seeking care abroad, particularly in Mexico. The strain is uneven but widespread. Surveys from KFF Health News show more than 2/3 of Americans now rank healthcare costs as a bigger concern than housing or food. In states like North Carolina, officials are warning families that annual premium increases could reach thousands of dollars. Political efforts to extend subsidies have stalled. U.S. Senate negotiations collapsed amid policy disputes, and reporting from the Wall Street Journal suggests renewed support is unlikely before midterm elections. Hospitals are also bracing for impact, with reports from Illinois projecting higher uncompensated care costs as more patients lose their coverage. And for those of you at home, this matters because rising premiums are forcing difficult trade-offs, and gaps in coverage today can translate into higher medical costs and worse outcomes tomorrow. Bringing Stephen back. Stephen, when premiums more than double for many families in a single year, what typically happens first in real life? Do people cut spending elsewhere, or do they start dropping coverage entirely? What are you making of these increased medical costs?
That's exactly right. We have a less healthy America when people don't go to the doctor, and we need that, right? We've now seen the largest measles outbreak in history, and the speed of it growing is astronomical. When you look at the healthcare premiums, I have looked at myself, the average cost per employee for an employer in 2025 was $17,496. Today,
Wow.
it's $18,500 in 1 year. And when people say, well, inflation's in check, that's some serious inflation. Healthcare
Yeah.
to me is very important. I want a healthy country. I want a healthy nation. I want people going to the doctor so that they don't make everybody else sick. But if they can't afford it, then they can't afford it.
Yeah.
That process to me seems a bit out of whack. The ACAs did help, but the president campaigned a whole year on he had a health care plan, and we haven't seen that health care plan.
Yeah.
I want to see that. I want to see what I want to see it passed, because right now people are actually hurting. And one of the biggest expenses for anybody is health care, and one of the biggest expenses for any employer on the employee is also health care. So you're also hurting the margins of businesses. So it's all the way around. And you want to lower costs of healthcare. You want to lower the costs of healthcare to employers, to employees, the employees are having to buy it, the premiums, all of it, Hank. So, and a country that's sick all the time is also not productive all the time. So
Yeah.
this is a catch-22 all the way around. Lower the premiums, get people back on health insurance. We made it where you can't, you have to have health insurance, and you made it where you can't be denied based on pre-existing conditions. So all of those things are good. Let's get back to normal. Let's get people back and not sick. This is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, you and I, when we talk on the show, we often try to kind of extrapolate what the ramifications or effects will be from, policies or actions or whatever. And in this situation, from like a more practical standpoint, Stephen, what do you think it means for hospitals and emergency rooms? Is more people show up uninsured or just delay care entirely? Of course, we're going to have a sicker country on the whole, but I'm always wondering, like, where do the costs show up? If more people are showing up to hospitals, but they have no insurance, like, what does that ultimately do to the system? Does that put additional strain on the system? Is that just putting additional strain on people's households? Like, any thoughts on what the eventual ramifications of that might be?
Growing up in a household, the healthcare was the number one thing. My mom was a pharmacist, as everyone knows. Um, when you don't have insurance and you have that Hippocratic oath from the doctor, those people go to the emergency room, and that is the last place we want them going just for the sniffles. Just go to the emergency room. Go see your GP, your general practitioner,
Yeah.
right? Make sure that they have adequate health care, because if they're just going, then they're jamming up the emergency room where people really are sick and
Right.
really do need help. Maybe with car wrecks and all kind of things. They don't need to be jammed up with somebody with the sniffles and the flu. They need to be cleared out so that now what's interesting is the number of emergency rooms have almost doubled in this country. Smaller places like HCA and Molina Health, and when you look at UNH, United Healthcare, they've expanded that.
Mhm.
And when I look at those places are really, really, really getting jammed up at the emergency room. Just go spend time in Chicago and just go watch Chicago Fire, Chicago Med. You can see
Yeah.
examples of it, right? Um,
Mhm.
but the two things that I always look at when I look at healthcare is the overall healthcare of the United States. Are we healthier than we were, than last year, the year before? I don't think the
Mhm.
answer is yes. I think the answer is no. We have this thing where we're not being vaccinated. I think this thing where, COVID has now run rampant again, and the worst COVID. I think now they're saying now
Mhm.
it's even worse this year than even 2 years ago. So
Oh,
we
jeez.
need people healthy. Healthy people go to work. Healthy people are productive. Unhealthy people are not. They get other people that get healthy people sick. So
Yeah.
this is a catch 22, as I said in the first episode. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can absolutely attest to what you're saying. I remember I had a brief time where I was uninsured after it lapsed, like a year or two out of college, and I was playing basketball and I tore a bunch of tendons in my ankle or something. I spent 12 hours at the Rush ER in Chicago just to get looked at for what was ultimately a couple of, stretched tendons. So like it does absolutely affect the system, and you're absolutely right. And I can attest to that firsthand. And Big Beat, if Congress doesn't act and nothing were to structurally change, right? What do you think healthcare is going to look like for middle income families a couple years from now? Are we just kind of heading down a path where things are looking progressively worse? I mean, like, what are you kind of expecting for Joe Q American in terms of their healthcare in the next couple of years? This
Well, you
doesn't
just
look
said
like
it
we're trending in a
yourself.
good
You said
direction.
yourself,
Yeah.
Hank. There was a time when it lapsed, and when people can't afford it, things are going to lapse, and they're going to say, "I can't afford it. I can't afford it." What are you going to do? Sue me? IRS going to come after me? Maybe, but
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case. And you're
Hmm.
going to see uninsured, and guess what? It's going to be the K economy even more, because it's going to be, oh well, you know what? It's going to be the people who can afford to buy insurance. The people who can, if you have good insurance, you can walk right on in, right? And that's not
Yeah.
fair either. That's not right. And it's not like people don't want to pay their health insurance or not have health insurance. They want it, but these premiums are going up too fast. Inflation on healthcare is growing way too fast, and you yanked the ACA some subsidies way too fast. So there's too many things going on here, and not one wrong makes a wrong, but two wrongs does not make a right, and three wrongs make it even worse. So right now, I think that we better make a move quickly. If not, come time election time, we might not have anything for the next 2 more years.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It's going to be a weird world where like you're starting to flex your deductible or your health coverage because it seems like it's getting increasingly harder to get any of the good kinds. So
Yeah.
we'll see. All right, we're going to take a quick break here at Big Beat, but when we're back, we're going to be going over our top Bitcoin story of this hour, and it involves one of the most talked about Super Bowl commercials that we saw all day yesterday during the big game. So stay tuned. More Roxom TV news coming your way after this.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
One of yesterday's most expensive ads on television landed with a thud. Coinbase ran a Super Bowl commercial seen by roughly 120 million viewers, and social media filled up quickly with clips, jokes, and criticism, signaling that instead of excitement, the ad triggered skepticism and fatigue. One moment captured the mood perfectly. Let's take a look.
You better rock your body now, everybody. Yeah, rock your body. This whole ad. Everybody, rock.
Comments kept piling on with negative sentiment. Coinbase spending millions in return for getting more hate for crypto, and Coinbase, a large part of the problem for that perception. Others mocked the moment entirely, calling it a rug pull on mainstream audiences who still feel burned by the last cycle. The broader takeaway is hard to miss. Centralized, splashy crypto marketing is colliding with a public that remains skeptical, cautious, and exhausted. For many viewers, the word crypto now carries baggage built over years of altcoin hype, NFT manias, meme coin speculations, and high-profile blowups. Now that matters for Bitcoin's message. When Bitcoin is bundled together with the broader crypto casino, the dysfunction gets blurred and trust erodes. Bitcoin adoption has historically grown through understanding and utility, not mass advertising campaigns. The boos, they weren't random. They reflected what the public has been trained to associate with the crypto brand. And for those of you watching at home, this matters because sentiment still shapes adoption. And right now, the market is making a clear distinction between curiosity about Bitcoin and lingering distrust of crypto as a whole. We're bringing Stephen back. Stephen, when a Super Bowl ad gets booed in living rooms instead of cheered, what does that tell you about where retail sentiment around crypto actually stands right now? What are your thoughts?
You know, I think the winner in the Super Bowl commercials this year were not the actual companies, but I think it was the Backstreet Boys themselves. I mean, they were in several commercials, right? Including Verizon and of course Coinbase. They didn't even know till the end. You know, I was singing along. I was like, well, of course, it's a very popular song. I mean, I get it. But Coinbase, I was like, what are you doing? Like, what?
Yeah.
But here's the key.
Weird. Yeah.
Here's the key. The first Coinbase commercial in 2022 was a QR code. You had no idea what the hell this was about. And it made you get your phone out and it made you go to Coinbase, and it was a call to action.
It was smart,
this year, it felt like that it was trying to drag you into something and then said, ooh, Coinbase. It was a little gritty, a little grinding on you, right? And so I understood that. But the point of any commercial is to get you talking about the name of the company and to get you there. So kudos to Coinbase. We're all talking about Coinbase today.
Yeah.
I totally understand. Is it going to affect their bottom line? I don't think so. Are people going to sign up to Coinbase because of that commercial? Are they going to turn their Coinbase account off because of that commercial? No. But Coinbase got what they wanted out of it, which was to talk about Coinbase. And so here we are, probably which is pissing off Gemini and the other companies that are out there that just didn't get their commercials in like the way that they did. So, you know, the retail is very fickle when it comes to what they want. Look, the best commercial this year I thought was the Budweiser commercial with the Eagle and the Clydesdale. I thought it was very nostalgic, and that's what people want when they see the Super Bowl, something that's nostalgic. Coinbase isn't nostalgic. And so when you talk about those kind of things, how do you harken back to those things that are nostalgic? And you need to, I get it, Coinbase, oh, we're the future. Okay. Well, you saw some commercials that were the future, like the vodka commercial. This vodka had two robots dancing. All right. But this is not like Doritos back in the day. It was a little different. Coinbase need to have a little bit different thought process behind it. And when you look at the other commercials, you look at what Mark Benioff did with Salesforce. He went to Mr. Beast and go, look, I don't know how to do a commercial. I'm going to go to Mr. Beast because he's popular. So Mr. Beast put in a $1 million deal. No one's gotten the deal yet. And guess what? We're all still talking about CRM and Salesforce. So I think the commercials are about one thing, keeping it in the public's nose and interest and tongue. And all those things have happened with Coinbase on this commercial. Was it positive? Probably not. But was it something that Coinbase was trying to do? Probably yes. And did they pivot off of another company, Verizon, with their deal with us, the singers? I don't know, but I will tell you this much. I'm still singing Everybody, so what the heck?
Yeah. Yeah. I was really surprised at the people's response to this because, like you, like me, like so many others, I was hearing it. We really were getting back into that like early 2000s nostalgia. I think I was even doing the dance, like really getting into it. And then people find out it's Coinbase, and it seems like somehow that sours this moment because that to me is what the Super Bowl commercials are. It's like, how can you create a moment in time for somebody, whether it's a moment of nostalgia or a good laugh that you get from a funny one, right? And I'm surprised that people, or I should rephrase this. Why do you think people got upset at the end? Why it was Coinbase? Because did they feel like it was maybe Coinbase's as attempt to kind of co-opt a piece of nostalgia from their life? Is that maybe why that was? Like, it doesn't make sense to me why people would get all upset about it being Coinbase. Was there a company it could have been that people wouldn't have been upset about? And is it just because of the negative, things we've heard in the crypto market for the last year or so? Like, why do you think people were so upset when they found out it was Coinbase of all companies?
If Coinbase had come out and said Coinbase presents karaoke, and that's what it was, and then it was karaoke, there was no surprises in it, I think it would have been a whole lot better. I think people would have gone, okay, let's sing along, right? Let's get the QR code out like they always do. That didn't happen, right? It was getting you singing, and then presented by Coinbase. Like, oh, we got you. People don't like the gotcha side of things, right? So if they had presented themselves a little bit better and saying this is a Coinbase commercial, because Coinbase is pretty much very popular in the world of Bitcoin. We all know that, right? But when you look at the commercial itself, it just seemed a little bit. You got into it, you were dancing, you were singing along. We all know how to do karaoke. We see the bouncing ball and the lights come on.
Yeah.
But it needed to be told up front, hey, this is Coinbase presenting, a nostalgia point here, and here it is. And you know how it comes up with karaoke. Maybe it says Backstreet Boys, Everybody, and then you're singing along. You're excited about it, right? It took me 2 or 3 lines to figure out, oh, wait, this is karaoke. Wait, what's going on here? It was a little confusing. So
Yeah.
I like the idea, I like the premise. It was okay. Being presented at the very back end of this commercial, boom, Coinbase, might have been a little jarring to a lot of people. And it was.
Yeah, maybe the payoff didn't quite coincide with the expectations that were set, and that mismatch caused people to not love it. Because I was like thinking about it, like literally, they could have put a little. I bet you last night that was probably the single largest instance of like global karaoke in the world. Like there should have been one of those world record things in the bottom, because I guarantee you there were tens of millions of people all singing that along together. It's a shame. It was a clever idea. I think they probably could have done a couple of things to make it a little more polished, but I liked it. You and I are talking about it as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, if you talk about the commercials in general, I think the big winner outside of the Budweiser commercial was the Mandalorian and Grogu commercial, right? Where they're riding down with Tauntauns. I mean, everybody got that nostalgia feel of going back to Star Wars automatically. And of course, the Mandalorian is a very popular show on Disney. So they got that nostalgia. It looked like a Ford commercial, right? I mean, it sounded like one. And then all of a sudden you got Tauntaun feet running around in the snow, and boom, there's the Mandalorian with Grogu, and all of a sudden you got that good warm and fuzzy feeling. I just think Coinbase missed that. They tried to get that feeling and didn't get it. So they missed, but they still got us all talking about it.
Yeah, and I always appreciate a big swing. So it's okay, Brian Armstrong. You guys did all right on that one. Well, that wraps up our time today, Big Pete. I want to say always a pleasure having you with us every Monday. It's my favorite part of the week. Before we let you go, though, there's a lot of week ahead. What's going on in your arena? Is there anything new from the team over at Quasar Markets? I know it's the best place to get that inside intel on what's going on in the market so you can actually compete with the big boys out there. Really quick, for those that haven't checked out Quasar yet, where can they go to check it out? Tell us about it, Stephen.
Yeah, I appreciate that. QuasarMarkets.com. And I think our machines are already figuring out that the system right now is telling us that most of the traders are waiting to see what the Fed is doing. The bottom line here is that there's a lot of misnomers, a lot of unanswered questions like Iran, like Taiwan, like Ukraine, and people are on edge right now after a heck of a run on Friday. So I appreciate that, QuasarMarkets.com, and big love out to you, Hank, and RoxomTV.
Thanks, Stephen. See you next week, buddy. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll see you next Monday. All right, gang. We're taking a quick break here at RoxomTV News. When we're back, we're going to be jumping into the second hour of today's show. We have a second hour special guest that'll be joining us in just a bit to break down all of the biggest news stories. So stay tuned. More top global news coming your way right after this quick break. Are you interested in effortlessly growing your Bitcoin portfolio? I sure am. And the Bitcoin credit card by Gemini earns you Bitcoin back on every purchase. Use it like any credit card. Buy lunch, gas, or your weekly groceries, and you'll earn up to 4% back instantly in Bitcoin or one of over 50 other cryptos straight to your account. All that with no annual fee. And right now, you can grab a $200 Bitcoin welcome bonus. It's the easiest way to start building your Bitcoin stack. Just go to Gemini.com to learn more. All right, let's begin with the top story of our second hour that's occurring in a Los Angeles courtroom as a legal experiment is underway that could redefine how social media companies are held accountable. A California woman identified as KGM is suing Meta and Google, arguing that Instagram and YouTube were intentionally designed to be addictive and that years of compulsive use contributed to her depression and suicidal thoughts. The plaintiff is now 20 years old, and this is the first case of its kind to reach a jury in state court. Legal experts say a verdict against the companies could open the door to thousands of similar lawsuits nationwide. At the center of the trial is a question regulators and parents have debated for years. Do features like infinite scrolling, autoplay, notifications, and algorithmic recommendations cross the line from engagement into negligent design? Now, KGM's lawyers argue that the platforms knowingly optimize these features to keep young users hooked without adequately warning families about mental health risks. They plan to compare the design to slot machines, rewarding constant engagement and reinforcing compulsive behavior during adolescence. If jurors agree, the case could result in both damages and punitive penalties. Meta and Google strongly dispute those claims. They argue that many factors contributed to the plaintiff's mental health struggles and point to investments in youth safety tools, parental controls, and content moderation. They are also expected to rely on long-standing legal protections that shield internet companies from liability over user-generated content, as this BBC reporter explains. Take a listen.
Attorneys say the trial starting Tuesday marks the first time in history that social media companies have ever been held to account by a jury in a court of law anywhere in the world. For years, the companies that run Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and YouTube have successfully used a 26-word legal provision from 1996, before social media even existed, as a legal shield. They've argued it means they're not responsible for what users post to their platforms. These cases will examine how the companies design their platforms, relying on company documents to show how they kept users scrolling, sometimes with catastrophic consequences.
Meta's CEO Mark Zuckerberg is expected to testify at the trial, projected to run into March, and becomes a high-profile test of Silicon Valley's legal defenses. The case arrives amid a broader backlash. Meta, Google, TikTok, and Snap are facing lawsuits from parents, school districts, and state attorney generals, while parallel cases move forward in federal courts in states like New Mexico. Now, internationally, countries including Australia and Spain have restricted social media access for minors. For viewers at home, this matters to you because the verdict could reshape how digital platforms are designed, regulated, and held responsible for the mental health impact on young users. We're going to take a quick break here at RoxomTV News, but when we're back, we got more to talk about in just a bit, including what's going on with Bitcoin. Everybody's searching for it, yet its price remains still below 70K. And in just a bit, we're going to be joined by our second special guest of the day to help make sense of all this news. So stay tuned. More RoxomTV News coming your way right after this quick commercial break.
Some call me Chicken Little, others Bubble Boy. I'm a bit changed, but sounds familiar, right? Let me tell you a hard truth. The S&P isn't rising, the dollar's falling. That's the trick, monopoly money. It's ice melting by the second. Your savings, your salary, your time. Worth less every second. Everyone's using the wrong measuring stick. Switch the denominator. Price the S&P into Bitcoin. Hard, fixed, unprintable. Suddenly your unstoppable index, it's collapsing. And while you cling to dollars, well, Wall Street already switched. Before, you needed 2 brokers.
Still getting my ninja bonus though, right?
Plenty of spreadsheets. And my quant!
I hate this part.
I was right, and I'll be right again. If I were you, I'd thank me.
You know my name's Dave, right?
Security matters. Zappo Bank. The only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Welcome back to RoxomTV News. Over the past few days, the crypto market hasn't just been moving fast, it's been revealing how people actually pay attention when things start to go wrong. As prices slid, something unusual showed up in the data. Instead of interest spreading across the market, it narrowed sharply. Google searches for Bitcoin surged to their highest level in a year, while interest in crypto more broadly sank toward 12-month lows. That split followed a violent price move. Bitcoin fell from roughly $81,500 to near $60,000 in just 5 days, erasing hundreds of billions of dollars in market value before rebounding above $70,000. Search data shows global interest in Bitcoin hit a peak score of 100 during the sell-off. Analysts say spikes like that usually reflect anxiety rather than optimism, as investors rush to understand what's happening and whether a deeper drop is coming. Market data suggests some buyers did step in. CryptoQuant shows increased purchases from U.S.-based investors during the decline. Bitwise analysts describe the rebound as selective dip buying, not a broad return of confidence. Altcoins, well, they tell a different story. Many smaller tokens continued sliding, reinforcing Bitcoin's role as the focal point when stress hits the market. At the same time, enthusiasm for crypto more broadly is fading. Search interest for crypto is hovering near 30, close to yearly lows. The total market value has fallen from over $4.2 trillion to about $2.4 trillion. Daily trading volume has dropped sharply as well as retail participation thins out, and sentiment indicators reflect that pullback. The crypto fear and greed index has plunged into extreme fear territory, matching levels last seen during the 2022 Terra Luna collapse. And sentiment reports negative commentary dominating online platforms, with traders focused on capital preservation. And for those of you at home, this should matter because it shows how quickly attention concentrates in moments of stress and how confidence in the broader crypto ecosystem remains fragile even as Bitcoin absorbs the spotlight. All right, joining me for this second hour of stories to talk about this and others, we have the founder of Perception. We have Fernando Nikolic, everybody. Fernando, welcome back to the show. It's been a while since we've had you. How have you been?
Hey, what's up, Hank? Good to see you.
Likewise, great to see you as well, Fernando. We got a lot to talk about today, and I want to begin with this first story. So, Fernando, when you see markets sell off this sharply, and then we see Google searches for Bitcoin spike while interest in crypto is collapsing, what does that split tell you about how people actually think about Bitcoin versus the rest of the space right now? Are people starting to understand the distinction? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily understand the distinction, but I think they understand that Bitcoin is the only thing that matters because that's what they're searching for. And crypto is just not interesting. When something crashes, Bitcoin is the one asset that is discussed the most, and everybody else is following. So I think the Google search tendencies went up because a lot of reports came out that Bitcoin was crashing, not the entire market. Nobody cares about those assets. It's Bitcoin that matters. And I think that search is a reflection. But listen, I think humans have a tendency to want to have very simple explanations to what the hell is going on in such a market that moves so fast. But I do think leaning into one metric like a Google search to find answers for like a very complicated market is not very productive. I think dashboards like Perception is exactly the reason why it was made, because you need to understand what the entirety of the market is discussing, what the sentiment is from a bunch of sources all at once, and you need to quantify that. But Google search is I guess is a directionally okay metric, but what really matters is what the entire market is talking about at the same time. So yeah.
Yeah, and I would love to get your thoughts on that. Like, what is the market from your seat at the table at Perception, Fernando? What is the market actually looking at right now? Because, you know, we often see these search spike, or these volumes of search spikes, seen these volumes of searches spike, you know, when people are panicking more than just like sheer curiosity. So in a moment like we're experiencing now, do you find that people are looking to buy? Are they just looking to understand like what went wrong? Or are they simply looking to kind of confirm their fears right now? Like what seems to be the sentiment based on what you're seeing?
Well, you know, these fear and greed indexes that people talk about and reference is actually a net negative for the industry, because these fear and greed indexes, they are kind of like reactive to price movements. So yeah, the price corrects, you know, very heavily, and the index goes down, or the price increases very dramatically, and all of a sudden it's greed. So it follows price action more than anything. So you don't really get a nuanced perspective on what the sentiment really is. And what's really cool in the Perception dashboard is you have an insider and an outsider section. So you can see what the sentiment is amongst insiders. So crypto media, trade media, analysts, Bitcoin traders, and the outsiders like mainstream media, politicians, you know, other people that are not really that deep into the industry. And you can really gauge the difference between the insiders and outsiders in terms of sentiment. And what's happening right now, which is very funny to see, is outsiders are very, very negative, but the insiders are way more positive. So that goes to show that, you know, there's no cause for alarm right now. At least if you were to trust those who are in the know, that are insiders to the industry. Sentiment is actually pretty good. And I think in terms of actual messaging and communications, I think a lot of people saw this correction as a buying opportunity, probably a buying opportunity that they've been waiting a while to get. So I think a lot of people are happy.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. You know, like for people like you and I, and who've been in the industry, especially who've seen what's gone on over the last year and a half, like the fundamentals are the exact same, like that they were back in October, yet the price is $50,000 less. So, you know, like to you and I, this seems like a good buying opportunity, but to everybody on the outside, you mentioned, it seems like to them, the sky is falling right now, because that's just their perception of things. And I do want to talk a little bit more about perception from like a perception standpoint, right? So my question for you, Fernando, is how much do moments like this kind of permanently reshape how retail investors categorize Bitcoin versus crypto in their minds? Like, is this in any way what we're experiencing now helping that differentiation, or do most people still kind of lump them together into the same pail?
Yeah, I think Bitcoiners and the entire Bitcoin industry needs to accept that we are going to be lumped in the same category for people who don't know that much about us yet. And the longer they stay within our channels, let's say, and get education and get messaging, then, you know, sooner they will get to that distinction rather than later. But I think for first timers, yeah, they're all going to think, you know, okay, let me buy some Bitcoin, and then while I'm logged into Coinbase or some exchange, I'm going to buy 3, 4, 5 coins. I think everybody has gone through that process in the very beginning. But I think the important thing here is it's not about belief. It's about understanding. So Bitcoin is not enough. It's not anything that you believe in. It's something that you acquire an understanding of. That takes a little bit of time, but I do think we are in a good position where we have a lot of good educators, a lot of good thought leaders, and just intelligent people that are representing Bitcoin right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it does beg a question right now. It seems, we never really got the altcoin season that a lot of people thought we'd get based on past cycles. And if attention keeps narrowing onto Bitcoin during these downturns like we're seeing right now, Fernando, what does that mean for how the broader crypto ecosystem evolves over the next cycle? Because it feels like right now, at least to me as someone who's on the inside, that Bitcoin is becoming more and more important, but everything else is seeming far less important than it was just a year ago, just a cycle ago. Is that kind of the beat you're getting right now, or how are you feeling about the space as a whole right now?
Well, I've been in this space since 2017. And so I've gone through a couple of market cycles already.
Yeah.
And what I can tell you is that this time around, when it comes to like developers, builders, founders of different companies that are in the crypto, Web3, DeFi space, I see mass capitulation, to be honest. There's a lot of people that are just quitting the industry and just moving on. Whereas the Bitcoin developers, builders, and founders, they are really, really motivated. And they are looking at the future in a very bright way. So I think this is the main distinction, which I think is going to be the results of this is going to be felt in a couple of years, because the builders are now coming to Bitcoin and are very, very motivated. And I don't know what's happening over there in the Web3 space. I don't know if people don't want to build companies and people don't want to fund companies. Then I don't know how that industry is going to look like in a few years from now. But I know that the Bitcoin industry a few years from now is going to look amazing. And I can't wait to see all the new innovations that are going to come, a lot of the products that are going to be introduced to a mass audience. And that is fundamentally what drives adoption in my mind. Good products, good user experiences, great brands, and great spokespeople. So I think there's a lot of momentum building up, and we're going to see the results of it in a few years' time.
Yeah, and momentum is an interesting thing, especially when it comes to the Bitcoin space, because you and I know, Bitcoin has no PR company that's vouching for it or helping push these narratives. It's just kind of based on the price and the sentiment that we get, from the market itself right now. My question to you is, as we've kind of touched on in this conversation already, Bitcoin and crypto tend to get kind of thrown into the same basket, even though they're fundamentally different things. And with that being said, do you think there's any onus or responsibility of people that are stewards in the Bitcoin space currently to help draw that distinction amongst the masses so that we can help accelerate adoption at all? Because part of me honestly is surprised that someone just hasn't bought the domain bitcoinisnotcrypto.com and started making those t-shirts or something, because it seems like a really good distinction to draw that would only help Bitcoin become adopted faster. I don't know. I'd be curious to get your take as a Bitcoiner. Is that onus on us at all, or is it just going to happen how it happens? What are your thoughts?
I mean, last time I checked, I think there was 29.1 million alternative coins in CoinMarketCap. All of them they print their tokens out of thin air and they use it on marketing and PR. You can't really blame people for not really adopting Bitcoin only. And you have to understand that Bitcoin is a decentralized and the entire industry is decentralized. There's no centralized entity coordinating messaging, communications, and there's no marketing budget in Bitcoin. So it's all organic, bottom up. So it takes a while, but we have a lot of competitors. We are in the same space. And to be honest with you, you can believe in Bitcoin and other alternative coins as well. I mean, you're not really you're not committing a crime here, even though some Bitcoin maxis might believe so. It's private money. It's open competition. If you believe in more than one coin apart from Bitcoin, okay, that's good too. And to be honest, another factor that we need to think about is that the media landscape is extremely fragmented right now. So I don't think there's going to be any mass adoption per se in the future. It's going to probably look like a fragmented adoption, meaning some people will find value in Bitcoin for the self-sovereignty aspect of it, but other people might find value in Bitcoin for the preserving purchasing power, or just getting rich and buy an ETF. And I think all of them, they see value in Bitcoin, and that's the most important thing. But they're all going to be very different in opinions and maybe even contradictory to the cypherpunk ethos as well. And I think that's what adoption is going to look like if we are serious about mainstream global adoption. Just a bunch of people embracing Bitcoin for different reasons, and there's no one reason that is better than the other. It's all good.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense because the different utilities appeal to different people for different reasons given their circumstances. So no, that makes a lot of sense, but I still think I might buy the Bitcoin is not crypto domain name. I think there's something there. I don't know what it is yet, but I'll let you know once I figure it out, Fernando.
I like it.
All right, we're going to move on to our next story here, buddy. And this next one is playing out across global financial media, but it was most recently aimed at readers in Asia, where the Financial Times decided to once again declare Bitcoin's supposed demise. The hook here is familiar, dramatic, and aggressively confident, with the FT labeling Bitcoin's recent pullback its worst crash since 2022 and warning the asset is on a doomed path that ends, quote, splattered on the ground. The article was written by longtime Bitcoin critic Jemima Kelly. And if that name sounds familiar, it should, because she has been writing variations of this same argument for more than a decade now. Here's the part that immediately raised eyebrows. At the same time this piece was circulating, Bitcoin was trading around $69,000 to $70,000, a level that is orders of magnitude higher than prior cycles and nowhere near the existential collapse the headline implies. Bitcoin analyst Pierre Rochard pointed out that the Financial Times quietly adjusted its headline to reflect a rising Bitcoin price, a move he mocked as editorial damage control to avoid publicly embarrassing the opinion writer as the market moved higher. Now, our own RoxomTV host, Walker America, highlighted an even more uncomfortable detail. That same FT journalist has been bearish on Bitcoin since it traded around $300 per coin. After this latest so-called crash, Bitcoin is still up roughly 23,000% from those levels. And if that is failure, it is a very unusual kind. The broader question here is why a major financial institution continues to publish arguments that have been stress tested and contradicted repeatedly over more than 10 years. Bitcoin has survived multiple 70 to 80% drawdowns, sovereign debt crises, monetary debasement, regulatory attacks, and countless obituaries, while still making higher lows across cycles. Walker, he summed it up pretty bluntly, saying many of Bitcoin's loudest critics are not neutral observers. They noticed it early, dismissed it, and never bought. And for viewers at home, this should matter because the narratives you see repeated by legacy outlets often say more about the author's history than the asset's reality. We're bringing Fernando back. Fernando, when a major outlet declares Bitcoin's doom while it's trading near cycle highs, why do you think that narrative still resonates with certain audiences? We've heard it time and again, but they keep bringing it back up. Why? Why don't they just put this one to bed? What are your thoughts?
They don't have the luxury to pivot on a message like this. They are struggling businesses that are desperate to maintain their audience base. The FT is a perfect example of an outlet that has been struggling for years. And, you know, as a legacy brand, they have built an audience partially by, talking shit about Bitcoin. You said it yourself. Jemima has been, covering Bitcoin's doom since 2013. The only thing that she would have just done is just buy Bitcoin and not write one article, and she would be in a way better place today. But that's not what happened. And the longer time that you repeat the same message and you build an audience through that message, then it harder becomes to change your mind. Because essentially pivoting on a standpoint means that, hey, maybe we were wrong. So you just don't have that luxury to say, hey, you know what, we were wrong about Bitcoin. This is actually interesting. We're supposed to cater to investors. Maybe we should write a balanced take on an emerging asset class like Bitcoin that has proven itself over and over again. Yeah. But Bloomberg and CNBC are outlets that had that luxury, that had a more successful business, more established audience base, more intellectual more smarter audience, perhaps, that could tolerate a pivot like that, and they did. And actually, Bloomberg and CNBC, they have almost specialists from in their reporter staff focusing entirely on Bitcoin. But the FT and other struggling legacy outlets that only have the logo left as any credentials, they can't do that. They have lost a lot of respect. They don't write good pieces. They're not objective. So what else is there to do? Doubling and tripling down on a message that gets you click and attention. So I think when the editorial team are looking at how well the tweets resonated with people, how much engagement they got, and probably how many clicks the article got, I think they were probably happy, because that's the only thing that is left for them that matters to them right now, which is sad. But I think it's a very realistic picture of what the mainstream legacy media looks like and how much trouble they're in.
Yeah, no, and that's really like just disheartening as a whole, because it's like, I remember when the internet first came out, a lot of people being like, oh, this thing is a passing fad. But eventually the internet became what it is, and they had to acquiesce and be like, hey, this internet thing's like pretty good, actually. I'm wondering what, if at all, or when, if it ever happens, is that point for Bitcoin? Like, I've never seen anything in my life people have been willing, like you mentioned, double, triple, quadruple down on in the face of evidence that completely contradicts their entire point. Is it because they've curated this viewership like a Peter Schiff, where people expect them to talk about this one contrarian lane, and if they don't, it kind of eliminates credibility for them talking about other things too, because they've shown that their conviction only goes so far? Is it really, because it almost seems it's like it's poisonous to the media landscape to continually push something that has like pretty clearly been proven otherwise, right? Like, this is kind of crazy to me. Like, how long is it going to take till some of these guys, you think, finally change their tune? It's been 16, 17 years now.
Look, it's not crazy at all. This is human psychology 101. I come from the music business. I remember working at Universal Music back in the day in 2007, 8, and 9, when Napster and LimeWire and the Pirate Bay disrupted the entire industry. Essentially, it's the same thing. It's free-flowing media and information that is being distributed permissionlessly, right? Decentralized way. You can't stop it. And the players, I mean, I was sitting in the executive rooms, seeing how the executives were like desperate to, ban Pirate Bay or just, stop that domain. And they didn't even understand the technology that is at play. They were still convinced that CDs was something that people wanted to buy, that people were not interested in creating playlists of 30 individual songs instead of buying a whole album. They were convinced that the same model that had proven successful to them as a business model were still relevant. And they were not willing to listen to anything else and to believe in any other thesis that changed that fact. So what did they do? They continued selling CDs. They did something called enhanced CDs, where you put it into a CD-ROM and you get like bonus material, stuff like people were not interested in at all. And that's exactly what the legacy media is doing right now. They're doubling, tripling down on what they have always done, because their opinion is very closely aligned to their business model. So they cannot change that. So they're just going to double and triple down as long as they live. But the problem is, we live in the internet age now, and your stubbornness becomes extremely cringe because it's so open to the public. You post something on Twitter and people are community noting you, or just like dunking on you in the comments. So you just look stupid. And that is something that, if they just continue to do, is going to be more and more obvious. And then it's like writing your own suicide note. It's just a matter of time before you fade into irrelevancy. So that's kind of like where we're at right now. I mean, it's super exciting. I love that the media is fragmented and that people have a voice and you can hear a lot of different opinions. But these people who have been in the game longer than anyone should know better. But hey, business models is what it is. People, they care about their paycheck, so they're just going to continue doing what they do as long as they can.
Yeah, and it's a shame, because ultimately that just ends up, hurting the consumer. So, like, my question, Fernando, is for viewers at home, how do you think they should be interpreting headlines right now that sound catastrophic at the surface, even when the underlying data, as we're seeing with Bitcoin, tells a very different story of what's actually going on. Should people just stop trusting legacy media as a whole? Is that maybe the lesson we need to learn here? Or what are your thoughts? How should people be interpreting this?
I think headlines is the only thing that people have time to actually read. So unfortunately, we are competing on headlines. And, I guess there's a moral imperative here in terms of how clickbaity are you going to be in order to get people through the door. There's a lot of, the largest door for Bitcoin adoption is obviously number go up technology. People want to get rich. People want to preserve purchasing power. And I think it's a great use case. It's a very important use case.
Yeah.
And I think probably we need to kind of like fight back with enticing clickbaits and headlines that cater to that deep emotion of, getting rich. But then comes, what comes afterwards. We got to promise certain things when we promote something, and we got to live up to that expectation that we set. That is something that I think a lot of people are not doing, and that is hurting the industry as a whole. But that's the landscape that we're in, right? So I appreciate the fact that platforms like yours and a lot of other more established outlets that are focusing on Bitcoin are playing the game, and you have like very catchy headlines, but then you actually deliver high value signal if you care to look a little bit closer. And we just have to hope that more people have the time to look closer. But unfortunately, majority of people don't have that luxury nor time. So yeah, we just got to be in the arena with all the other scammers and try to just be more attractive and sexy. There's really no other way.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to try it starting right now because I got a big headline for you, Fernando. You ready?
Let's go. Let's do it.
Some analysts are saying Bitcoin could reach 150K this year. Let's talk about it. Here we go, because that's what analysts at AllianceBernstein are predicting. According to an analyst commentary circulating across markets, the firm believes the structure of this cycle looks materially healthier than prior booms. The argument centers on resilience. Unlike previous cycles that unraveled due to exchange failures, hidden leverage, or credit contagion, recent Bitcoin drawdowns have not exposed major systemic risks. Volatility has been absorbed without forced liquidation spiraling out of control, leading analysts to describe this as the weakest Bitcoin bear case on record. On price targets, AllianceBernstein has reiterated a forecast of $150,000 for Bitcoin. That call is tied to growing institutional allocation, steady participation in spot Bitcoin ETFs, and deeper market liquidity that reduces overall fragility. Supply dynamics also factor in. Bitcoin issuance is capped. A new supply has slowed following the halving, and analysts argue that even modest portfolio reallocations could create outsized price impact. The thesis is not driven by hype, it's driven by structure. In Bernstein's words, nothing blew up, no skeletons emerged, and no hidden risks unraveled during the recent stress tests. And for those of you at home, this should matter because it shows how Bitcoin is increasingly being evaluated not as a speculative experiment, but as an asset that is quietly maturing inside of all traditional finance. We're bringing Fernando back. Fernando, when an asset manager overseeing hundreds of billions of dollars says this cycle looks structurally healthier, what specifically are they seeing that maybe wasn't present in earlier booms? What are your thoughts?
I have a strange feeling that AI is fueling a lot of these conversations because I think people are seriously understanding how AI is going to drastically improve, change the knowledge worker industry as well as the more blue collar, delivery physical work. And I think this acceleration of insane, it's pretty impressive, the gains that is happening in AI and how productivity is going to really soar and how deflationary that technology is. But I do think, to be honest with you, a lot of people will lose their jobs. You see a lot of news with extreme layoffs in the biggest companies. I think it's only going to continue. And I think that makes the case for UBI, Universal Basic Income, extremely attractive for a lot of people. I think a lot of people will just rebel. They will hit the streets. They will just want shit for free because they don't have any other means of revenues. And in an inflationary environment where things only get more and more expensive, nominally, people are going to rebel. So UBI is probably going to kick in, and the only way to offer UBI is to print more money. That's going to send a currency in crazy inflationary spiral, and hard assets like Bitcoin is going to soar in that environment. And I think a lot of these analysts, a lot of people think that this is going to happen sooner than they maybe were thinking, because the UBI discussions was something that was maybe like post 2030 in a lot of conversations that I've been listening to, at least. And I think with the advent of AI and the progress that it's making, I think a lot of people are seeing, whoa, this future is happening now. And hard assets, people with hard assets are going to really thrive in that environment. But then again, 150,000, man, maybe that's the price for 2 burritos in 2028.
Right.
So what does that get you? And that's another question to ask.
Yeah, you brought up UBI. I'd be curious of what your thoughts on that are. Do you think that's a real tangible thing that we could see? Because no matter what way I try to slice it in my brain, universal basic income just doesn't work for me. One, because throughout the course of history, I haven't really seen a lot of like billionaires say, hey, you know what? I'm just going to start giving everybody money for not doing anything all the time. And then 2, like idle hands are the devil's playground, man. And then 3, people without a sense of like a path or like a North Star of their own, and they're just getting money. Like that seems to me like really dangerous for humanity as a whole. Do you think that universal basic income could be a real fixture in human society that could work? Because to me, every way I think about it, it just ends up in disaster. But I'd be curious.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, and I think both of us, we are productive members of society, so we don't really see that. And I agree with exactly all the points that you made. I do think humans innately have a desire to feel like they belong on this earth for a reason. Like you need to have some sense of meaning when you do stuff and you wake up in the morning, right? But there's a big but. People will ask for free money. People are going to be more desperate, and I think also we are living in a time where work is not as glorified as it was maybe in prior generations. There is very little pride in most people's works. A lot of people are fed up with work. There's a movement of like degrowth and work as something that needs to be reduced to like 4 hours a day and less time. And a lot of people, when they feel like this, they're going to like scream and shout like little kids on the streets and begging for attention. And politicians are sadly going to listen to that and think, if this group of people, if this cohort is large enough, then we're going to cater to that cohort in order to get votes. We see a lot of stupid things being done by politicians just to get votes and sustain power. And politicians, you mentioned millionaires. Well, millionaires are millionaires because they actually created something of value to society. Politicians is pretty much the exact opposite of all of that. So they don't have a sense of where money comes from, or they see it as another tool, as a political tool that they can wield in order to gain power or retain power. So I think, unfortunately, I agree with you. It's not a good thing, but I think a lot of people, and a growing number of people, will ask for it, and it will happen. And then, 150K for 2 burritos, baby. That's
Oh God, I rue for that day. Burritos are already burritos used to be like $3. They're like $15 now. It's just crazy. And I want to kind of hone back in on this story here, Fernando. For everyday investors out there, how meaningful is it that Bitcoin is increasingly being discussed inside of, like, we're seeing it now in research notes rather than just like social media, like threads? Do you feel like Bitcoin is like finally kind of getting truly ingratiated into like our modern society here? Because like, for the longest times, 15, 16 years, right, it's been this alternative asset class that's been looked at akin to like a tech stock, but people think of it as digital gold. Like, are we finally like reaching that point where Bitcoin is what's what I'm looking for, like an undoubtedly part of the like financial system right now? Is there no going back, or is there still a world where maybe it just doesn't work? Like, where are we on that journey now? We're 17 years in. Is it there's no turning the ship around, or are there still things we need to figure out?
Oh man, I think we have started the financialization of Bitcoin, definitely, and I think a lot of Bitcoiners probably mad at that. But yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I track for a living. I track everything that is being discussed, talked about, and written about when it comes to this industry through perception. And every day there's papers from all central banks from all over the world, minutes, speeches involving Bitcoin. And it's definitely ingrained in that world in terms of research, central banks, financial committees, and hedge funds, family offices, creating information about Bitcoin in the language that works for them. But I think that the main thing that is missing for this to truly find a spot in a global level is for the mainstream to really kick in. We need Kanye West to wear Satoshi branded merch. We need rappers to rap about Bitcoin. We need cultural moments that really defines Bitcoin as part of the zeitgeist. It's boring now with all these suits writing research papers and quasi intellectual papers on this. We need Bitcoin to be cool, to be part of the culture, to drive language, to drive visual communication. We need Bitcoin to be at that level. And I think, to be honest, it's up to the Bitcoin companies to do so. And and a lot of people hate Coinbase, but I love Coinbase for what they do. They try to put Bitcoin in somewhat relevant space at Super Bowl, with ads that they do on TV, Block, Square, Cash App. Those are like brands that really try to bridge the gap between the contemporary cultural zeitgeist and then putting Bitcoin in that same conversation. We need more companies like those two. We don't have enough companies, and that's really the missing piece here, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, you make a great point, because like a lot of the things you're talking about to me would be things that would be serviced by like a PR company. So my question to you is, are you surprised we haven't seen a really big Bitcoiner out there? A Winklevoss, somebody who's got a big stack, a Michael Saylor, come out and just like create a Bitcoin PR company with the idea being it doesn't have to make money. It just needs to spread the gospel about Bitcoin, because if you hold a bunch of Bitcoin and you're spreading the good word and increases the price, that seemingly kind of pays for itself. Why do you think we don't really have anybody doing that right now? Because we need somebody. We know Bitcoin is for everybody. Bitcoin solves a ton of problems. It's for the greater good of humanity. Why isn't anybody taking a couple of shekels and started a Bitcoin PR company and get the narrative rolling in the right direction? Why do you think that hasn't happened yet?
I think we're still like a wild bunch of cypherpunks that are just running around, playing and building and trying to understanding what this is as we go. So it's going to be hard to coordinate on a message that's going to be like general for the public. But I feel you, man. I come from marketing communications myself. I'm a former VP of marketing communications at Blockstream. Was there for 4+ years. So I definitely feel the pain of like how big of a struggle it is to really explain something that crazy, complicated, and wonderfully chaotic like Bitcoin to normies. We definitely would be better off if we had some coordination around that. But at the same time, maybe that coordination would actually be against the purpose. I think there's some charm, there's some mystique, there's something of an attraction and allure with Bitcoin being a little bit crazy and a little bit disorganized at the same time. Maybe I'm old school, but that's kind of like what I think of Bitcoin. That's kind of like how I got attracted to Bitcoin in the first place, and I don't want to lose that, because I think it's an important part of the DNA. It's an important part of the brand, actually. That Bitcoin doesn't think about a brand. That's branding in itself. So maybe coordination ruined that, but I don't know. You're not the first person that says that to me, that thinks we should coordinate PR and comms better, for sure.
Because it is a branding in of itself, but like it's also not doing it any favors by putting out favorable campaigns or like anything. So we might have to, I don't know. I just feel like it's surprising to me. We haven't seen that. Bitcoin does, in theory, does so much good for humanity. You know, you'd think somebody would want to push that forward. But yeah, we'll see. All right, Fernando, we're running a little bit short here on our time today. However, before we let you go, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. Your insight and expertise are always an absolute pleasure to have on this show. And before we let you go, I know you have your platform, Perception. Really quick, tell us about it. I know you're helping kind of level the playing field for a lot of traders out there so people can get all the information that's currently available and make some real and informed decisions, you know, for their investing future. Really quick, tell us about Perception. Where can we go to check out more information about it? The audience would love to know.
Yeah, so Perception is more than just a trading tool, I would say. It's a market intelligence tool that essentially tells you what is going on, what is trending, what is downtrending, what kind of sectors in the industry is gaining some kind of attraction, who talks about what, essentially. And apart from the input and all the data that you get, there's a lot of interesting outputs. So if you are in investor relations, if you are in comms, if you are corporate development in a company, or if you're a research analyst, then you can, with that data, you can create a bunch of competitive intel. You can create briefs, you can create presentations, decks, deep dives into the industry. If you want to, if you need to create a thesis about investing in the mining space, you can ask Perception to do that job for you. It's your personal research analyst that is always on. And apart from a dashboard, there's APIs and integrations with Claude, ChatGPT, and Gemini. So you can just log on to Claude or ChatGPT, ask questions, and you will get Perception data back. So it's for the knowledge workers of the industry, people that are in the business of gathering information and adding context to that. And that is something that is done manually, and it takes a lot of time, and it's a mess, quite frankly. So I built Perception for those people. And right now we have a research analyst, VC companies, traders, and comms professionals using Perception. If you want to check it out, the website is perception.to. You can sign in, 7-day free trial, and check out all the features for yourself. And hit me up if there's anything that you want to go through. I'm happy. I give out 5-6 demos a day to people who want it. So just hit me up if you wanna walk through personally.
That's amazing, Fernando, because I can speak, you know, I would be an absolute user of that. There's so much information out there today, which is great, but it's so hard to synthesize and make sense of it all, to get like the real signal from all these like varying, you know, vantage points across the world and different news sources and media sources. So such a cool platform. Everyone make sure to check it out. And Fernando, thank you again so much for joining us. It's been an absolute treat. Hope to have you again later this year to talk more shop. And if you got any news with Perception, make sure you let us know so we can have you on to talk about it.
Thanks for having me back, Hank. Pleasure as always.
Oh, pleasure's all mine. Thanks, Fernando. All right, we're taking a quick break here at RoxomTV News. And when we're back, we got one more top news story of the day that you are not going to want to miss. So stay tuned. We'll be back right after this quick break.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Welcome back to RoxomTV News. Over the weekend, hundreds of opposition figures were freed as part of Venezuela's release campaign. But within hours, opposition leader Maria Corina Machado said a close ally was abducted again, underscoring that coercion remains central to Venezuelan politics. That instability matters because oil remains Venezuela's economic lifeline, and the United States is reportedly preparing a broad license that would allow companies to produce oil and gas in Venezuela, easing years of sanctions. For Washington, licenses function as leverage. For Caracas, oil revenue is the fastest way to stabilize a collapsing fiscal base. At the same time, enforcement actions and export disruptions have constrained production. A Reuters OPEC survey found output depressed through late 2025 and early 2026, though U.S. officials say production could rise if constraints ease. This creates a bit of a paradox. Venezuela is seeking revenue through oil while loosening political controls that once guaranteed compliance. Internally, the ruling party is showing cracks. Traditional loyalty mechanisms like cash bonuses and food programs are strained by hyperinflation estimated above 400%. Local party participation has dropped, and distrust of interim president Delcy Rodriguez is growing. That erosion complicates long-term oil policy. And economic reforms, including reduced state control, are gaining traction, but fragile party unity makes them hard to sustain. The amnesty law advancing through the National Assembly reflects tactical maneuvering more than institutional reform. For Venezuelans, this matters because oil negotiations determine whether the country attracts investment and stability or simply recycles revenue through a fragile political system without improving daily life. All right, gang, that is a wrap for today's Monday edition here at Roxom TV News. Thank you so much for starting your week with us. And if you haven't already, do the thing. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to Roxom TV, Roxom TV News, and me at Hank at Roxom TV on all the platforms. They're on all of them, so make sure you don't miss anything by checking us out there. And we will be back tomorrow with our normal time of 8 a.m. PST to 10 a.m. PST. Remember, on Mondays, we're 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., but the rest of the week, that's Tuesday through Friday, we start at 8 a.m. and end at 10 a.m. Pacific. So make sure you tune in, and I will see all of you boys and girls tomorrow. In the meantime, stay safe, stay informed, and always be sure to huddle on. See you guys on Tuesday.